Okay, good morning. Sorry, I should say good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's elected member briefing. I'll start tonight's meeting recognising that we're meeting on the traditional owners of our elders and pay respects to the Whyalla people and their elders past, present and emerging. Just a reminder to everyone online that tonight's meeting is being both live streamed and recorded. So you'll see that reflected across the banner at the top of your screen. And everyone who's participating in the meeting needs to be aware that the meeting will be recorded and published on our website. As with elected member briefings, tonight is not a decision-making forum. It's an opportunity for councillors and staff to discuss various matters, which will help shape the reports that will ultimately come back to council for formal consideration. During the course of tonight, elected member briefing, we have a number of confidential items. So at the time that we get to those items, the elected members and staff will move into a confidential breakout room, and then we'll return to the public meeting at the conclusion of those confidential items. So with those opening remarks, we'll kick off tonight's agenda. And we've got two items listed on the agenda to do with buildings and the annual business plan. Grant, would you like to talk to the first item just to kick this item off, please?
Thank you, Justin. I elect members. So just giving an update on, I guess, process. With the annual business plan budget. So the audit, special audit committee meeting was held today to review the content for the draft annual business plan and budget and the process so far, ready for presenting a document to council in at the April meeting. So I'll go through what's in that report, but I'll just flag at the start that we'll send out that report to all elected members tonight so that they can see the content. It's not in its final, nicely graphically designed form. That's just getting finalised now, but it's basically all of the content that will sit in there. So then that way the elected members can start to do, if they want to change any of that wording or raise anything for the April meeting, they'll have plenty of time to review the content before the actual council agenda goes out in a week's time or so. Yeah, that we'll send that out later on. But yeah, so the graphically designed one is getting done now, and we'll be able to make any changes after that meeting before we actually go out for public consultation as required. So the report to the audit committee, I guess the main things outlined was the process undertaken so far. So outlining the budget parameters that council considered back at the start of the year and adopted to help formulate the business plan and how it would be built, and obviously some of those parameters sort of offset against each other and require a bit of balance to be found, and that's part of the process and the discussion. And then it looked at the internal processes around building sort of business unit plans that we didn't have last year, so that's an improvement in the process, and that helped to sort of build up from the bottom the key areas that that need addressing to deliver on council's strategic plan. So that was done in individual departments to start with, and then obviously was discussed across the organisation, and then that was presented to council at a workshop. So that's that part of that formulation of the plan, and then the report sort of goes through some of the challenges that council are dealing with from a budget perspective. So I guess the two key ones that were highlighted were the airport being one key area of council, obviously with coronavirus and the effect that's had on passenger numbers, but alongside a couple of other issues as well that have, we've obviously just done a major upgrade to the terminal, and some of the grant requirements are that we can't on charge all that depreciation necessarily to passengers because it has been government funded. So that just means we need to have probably further discussions with the audit committee, and we had a little bit of that discussion today about, you know, what are the financial targets for the airport. It may have to run at a slight deficit because of those grant funding requirements, but also, yeah, looking to, obviously we know that we've got challenges with working with the airlines and coming to a balance between, you know, the operating position of the airport and also supporting the industry that's running out of it. So that's one side of it. And then obviously council also dealing with some, I guess, resourcing issues. We know we've got a large number of what we call, you know, a list of legacy issues and priorities for council to be dealing with. And we're also trying to get the city ready for the opportunities that are potentially going to be arising in the city very soon, and the challenges that come with that. So they're probably the two big areas in the budget that are, you know, are putting pressure on council's budget position. And so then what the report goes with is that conversation we sort of workshopped about, you know, obviously the original projections for the plan were sort of very large deficits across the whole plan and not really coming down. And then some of those initiatives we've highlighted for bringing, you know, council back towards that break-even position. We know there's, as outlined in the report, we know there's more work to be done in that space than the ones we've highlighted. We've sort of highlighted the ones that we believe that we can deliver on now, but there are other ones that need more work before they can be incorporated into the long-term financial plan to, you know, meet that break-even position sort of around the middle of the plan as we currently want to. And there was good discussion with the audit committee on that today. And in a sec, we'll bring up the resolution that they passed and recommended to council. And I guess the last bit is obviously the rate increase. So, you know, the plan is built around a 4.9% rate increase, which is CPI of projected CPI of 3.3% plus 1.6%. So that's, you know, in line with basically our long-term financial plan. It's actually a little bit slightly lower than our long-term financial plan projected rate increase because of a couple of small factors for the current year. But yeah, so that's, you know, the environment we're operating in and the rate increase required as, you know, projected by our long-term financial plan. And, you know, and that is one of the parameters we're working towards is sort of trying to keep rate increases in line with that adopted long-term financial plan and not having big shocks. That is one of the parameters. Yeah, and so then the audit committee had quite a good conversation, and I think Kathy was going to bring up the wording that they adopted today. No, Kathy's got that.
Yep, it's coming on the screen. There we go.
Excellent. So we just provided in the recommendation there was space for the audit committee to sort of add in some feedback to council. The first one they added was just that we there's some new requirements from the local government reform around how you present your rates data. So we're adding that as a third appendix to the document. We were already planning to do that. The audit committee just wanted to make sure that that was written down, that we added that in. So that's just so that all councils in South Australia will present their rates data in a consistent way to be comparable and not sort of you know, do anything tricky that some councils have potentially done in the past. And then the other two are sort of regarding the conversation that was had around agreeing with, you know, some of the concerns around the financial sustainability shown in the current projections, and, you know, the third one saying that, you know, strongly recommending that council undertake further work in developing plans to improve that financial sustainability. And that's what the report discussed, that, you know, there's more work to be done in that space to identify more measures and initiatives to bring the position back to break even a lot quicker than the current projections show. So that was the report. That's the update. So happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, councillors, anyone got any questions of grants or comments? Councillor Knox. I think you're still on mute, Councillor Knox.
I'm just a little bit concerned about people who are low incomes. I think that they will be starting to struggle. I know that I don't class myself in that area, but I know people who are, and I know that they're really struggling. I also know that the superannuation is down quite considerably to what it was approximately 6 months ago. So I think it behoves us to have a look at what we could do to ease the burden on those low income people who are up for their own rates.
Okay. Justin's on mute.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Grant, did you want to talk about what the average increase looks like in terms of rate increase and how the fixed charge would be influencing those on lower incomes?
Yep, happy to discuss some of the impacts there. So the average, so 4.89% rate increase will be a $64 a year, so just over $1 a week for the average residential property. So obviously there is a spread of that based on currently site value. Yeah, one of the things we're doing this year, similar to last year, is keeping the fixed charge at the same level. So it means obviously those with probably a lower, the lower value properties by site value would have probably a slightly lower increase in their rates than those with a higher amount, because the rate in the dollar will affect that a little bit more this year. And one of the reasons we're doing that, similar to last year, is to give ourselves a bit more leverage up our sleeves when we make the change to capital values, when we know that that'll be a big change and potentially some large changes in rating, and then we can use the fixed charge a little bit to help adjust and smooth out some of that. But yeah, so not putting that fixed charge up does sort of help a little bit with the lower value properties.
Okay, Councillor Knox, did you have a supplementary question or just left your hands up from before? Yeah, just checking in. Councillor Knox, did you have something else to say?
My hand doesn't seem to want to go away. It's gone now, though.
Yeah, no problems. Any other councillors want to ask a question or make a comment in relation to the annual business plan and budget as presented? Okay, if not, we will be bringing the annual business plan and budget to the April council meeting. Just checking, Kathy, were you able to bring up the recommendations from the Audit Committee? I've just had a little technology glitch. So the councillors are seeing the recommendation that are coming or will be coming to the April council meeting. So we will bring that, the annual business plan, draft annual business plan and budget to the April council meeting, seeking council's endorsement to commence community consultation based on the draft as it is at present. So,
so Justin, yes,
yep.
that did come up on the screen. That was fine.
Yep.
Okay, Kathy did get on the screen.
Yeah, no problems.
Thank you.
Councillor Stone, did you have a question or comment?
Just a point of clarification. When you just say as presented, all I've seen are those recommendations from the Audit Committee. I haven't seen the draft yet. Have we actually?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So Grant's presented the draft annual business plan to the Audit Committee. And that will now be coming through to the council for consideration at the April meeting. So you'll see the full annual business plan in its full presentation, ready for endorsement for community consultation.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, and I will send out the content in the either tonight, or I'll get Michelle to send it out tomorrow. So that'll be the content that is going to be in that annual business plan, so that you'll have a bit of extra time to read through it before it's actually on the council agenda for April. But it just won't be in its sort of nice, fully graphically designed format when what you see. It's just the content itself. right now.
Okay, all right, I'll do one last call. Any last final questions or comments on the draft annual business plan before we move on to the next item? Councillor Stupos?
Yeah, I just want to pass one comment when my fellow councillors look and review the current annual business plan. Last year when we set our rates, we made a mandate to break even in the year 26-27. We are not achieving that. So we've broken our promise from last year. If we want to try and meet that promise, we have to make some hard decisions and actually accept a much higher rate than is currently being offered. That's the price we're paying in a situation where the world supply chain is costing us a fortune to do business. If we don't accept the increase in rates, we all better sit here and decide what we're going to give up to the community of this town, because we can't keep funding it and going into deficit borrowings every year. So, you know, all I stress is that you keep an open business mind when you read that plan, because as I predicted in previous years, this would come back and bite us on the backside, and that's exactly what it's doing at this point in time. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Councillor Stupos. And as we confirmed with the Audit Committee earlier today, we've got an uncomfortable and unsettling period before us, where we've got sort of the candle burning at both ends of the candle. On the one end, we've got obviously limitations in terms of our rate revenue and a number of legacy issues that we're trying to attend to. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we've got potentially once in a lifetime opportunity to leverage the hydrogen investments that's proposed for Port Bonython and look to set our city up to encourage more people to come and live and work in Whyalla as opposed to drive in, drive out, or fly in, fly out. So one of the things that we've not factored into our long-term financial plan is the anticipated new development, both commercial and in time residential, that we anticipate, because clearly it's too difficult to quantify when that development may occur. However, as per previous discussions, we'll be advocating through the federal government election, together with the state government and the private sector, for an investment in our city and the urban renewal of our city to make it ready to serve the future hydrogen industry, as well as a current industry and business that already exists in our city. So Councillor Stupos has made a correct statement. In terms of our target, we're not at this point in time going to achieve that unless we do make some significant reductions in services. But I think, given the forwards opportunities that are in front of us, trying to reduce service levels now seems counterintuitive when we're trying to attract more people to come and live in our city. Anyway, we'll move off to that item and we'll have more robust debate and discussion at the April council meeting. We'll now turn to the second item on tonight's agenda, which is the Wiler Leisure Centre. And I will ask one of the staff, I'm not sure which one wants to lead off with talking to this one. Is it which staff member wants to?
I think it's going to be me, Justin.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. All right, we'll hand over to you. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Good evening, members. The presentation is been included in your agenda papers. The master plan for the rec centre was first introduced in December 2021 to you by the consultants that were engaged to design the master plan. At the time, a significant amount of community engagement and consultation occurred as part of the master plan development. And the options that were presented as part of the master plan reflected the community's aspirations, wants and needs for this much loved piece of community infrastructure. Council again at the time requested administration to pursue cost estimates of the two preferred options. There was option 2, which is outlined on slide on page 4 of the slides, and on page slide 5 is option 3. At the time, elected members asked us to get the costings on those two options, which we did. The cost estimates for option 2 is, as you can see, is $10.4 million, and the option 3 is $17 million. Significant cost differences. Both options reflect the community's aspirations. The report was adjourned by council in February to allow you a bit more time to digest the information, and so I guess this briefing is an opportunity for me to hear your feedback and also to, I guess, determine how you would like the report to come back to council as well, and what pieces of information you may require to include in that report. The other thing is, I guess, we have included a bit of a recommendation to council to consider. A recommendation of what a preferred option might look like and what could council afford over a staged approach. And I guess option 2 is that's the lower, the $10 million one. It reflects the community's needs, desires and aspirations. Both of the options can be delivered in stages, and I believe that's very important given that I'm just following a budget discussion. And this project is asking council to invest. We believe that the investment can be spread over multiple financial years and also allows administration to pursue funding opportunities. I guess the one thing also to note is that this is an ageing facility. It's a much loved community facility, and any refurbishment will actually only enhance the visitor experience. Any comments, feedback?
Councillors, any questions or comments for Liz? Councillor Simpson.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether the question was asked before or not, but has YMCA been asked to look at any funding they can apply towards this upgrade?
Yes, there is some. I mean, I guess if we know the direction that council would prefer us to pursue, then we can source funding as well. There are opportunities, I believe, out there, and we can continue to monitor the grant funding landscape. The two most recent examples that have actually received funding is the Salisbury Aquatic Centre and the Mount Barker Regional Aquatic and Leisure Centre. So they both received state government funding, and the Mount Barker example actually also received federal funding.
Was that received via the council or via the user, via the leasee of the centre? Like we have YMCA using the centre as their business. Are they contributing?
Sorry, Councillor Simpson, it's by the council has received that funding, both of the councils.
Yeah. but what I'm asking you is the YMCA able to achieve additional funding as the lessees or the users?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might come in there and say that the asset is actually owned by council. A capital upgrade of the facility would be funded by council, and consequently any grant funding that we were to receive would come to council in the first instance. The YMCA currently have a management agreement in place to provide a service through the facility. That agreement expires within the next 12 or 18 months. Can't remember exactly when. So we will need to go back out to market at some stage to look at who may wish to run the facility. We certainly have broached with the YMCA what the facilities could or should have in them, given that they obviously have a vested interest and keen interest and understand the facility, given that they run it on a day-to-day basis. So we certainly got input from the YMCA during the consultation phase for the master plan. But until we secure or go out to the market again for the management arrangements for this facility, we wouldn't be in a position to specifically ask a future service provider whether they would be prepared to part fund a redevelopment of the facility. I'll go to Mayor Mclaughlin next.
Thank you, Justin. I guess obviously with the change of government and the promise from the Labor state government for $6 million towards sporting hub, etc., is this a part of the potential plan that could be considered, or is it we're going to keep that separate?
We certainly could include this or the $6 million as part of our consideration. The Labor commitment did specifically reference the Edward John Eyre High School site. And certainly the local state member is aware that the Whyalla Recreational Leisure Centre is a 1975 vintage building that has got a few issues, and would be aware that if we were to look to seek federal government funding to match or certainly at least match the state government funding, we'd be potentially looking at about anywhere from 12 million to maybe potentially 20 million. That kind of investment is not going to build a brand new facility, so we need to have discussions with both the state government and the federal government as to where that future funding might get invested. Just before I move on, Mayor, did that answer your question, or did you? Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Stone next.
Thank you, CEO. Looking at the two options, while there is certainly an element within the community, oh yeah, I am on. While there is an element in the community that would certainly like a 50-metre pool, the decision made all those years back was obviously made on good intentions at the time. I think this is still, I think this is right here on the chase. Enjoy the moment. Oh, it's all right. I got thrown. I could hear the chase. I do not believe we can justify $7 million to extend the swimming pool, as much as some would like that. I believe that we can't wait to see how long it will take to get something happening on John Edward Eyre. I think this is a separate issue. We then have a fantastic sporting hub over at John Edward Eyre for other sports. We have the rec centre upgraded. The cost, I don't think the building and the community just can't wait that long. So I would at this stage lean towards option 2, unless we could find a fantastic white knight with so many millions in a bag of money to justify option 3. I would go for option 2. And I don't think, as I said, it can wait on what may or may not happen over at John Edward Eyre High site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knox. I'll go to Councillor, Thank you, Councillor Stone. I'll now go to Councillor Knox.
Okay, thanks, Justin. I guess I favour option 2, but I'm also concerned we don't have any money. You've got the state government who wants to do Ever Johnny straight across the road. They expect us to put in a reasonable amount of money as well. I don't know where we're going to get it all from. Seriously, I don't. My thoughts are that you do the minimum at the rec centre currently to keep it operating safely, and just the minimum, because I don't think we can afford anything else. The other thing is too, have we ever had any thoughts about managing it ourselves? We used to manage it ourselves going back into the 90s, and maybe it's worthwhile revisiting what it might cost us if we did it in-house. It might be more expensive, but it could be, we might surprise them. So, we should at least have a look at it.
Thank you, Councillor Knox. I'll go to Councillor Stupos next.
Outside of the ball, I'm going to go for option 3. Strange, isn't it? If you look at the two projects combined, all we're doing is going from a 25-metre pool to a 50-metre pool. If you divide the total project cost by those two measurements, a 25-metre pool costs you $418,000 per metre. A 50-metre pool gives you $341,000 per metre. It's actually cheaper for the bigger one. My argument is, and I haven't been involved with a public consultation, but is a 50-metre swimming pool going to be more valuable and more handy to this community in attracting other people, other swimming clubs, the country meets here in Whyalla, as opposed to a 25-metre pool? If it does, I'll be more in favour of spending the 17.1 million for the bigger pool.
Thank you, Councillor Stupos. I'll just defer to any staff. Was there any Liz, did you want to respond to any of those comments?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of in I'd like to maybe address the 25 versus the 50-metre pool, if I may. Interestingly, significant research has actually shown, and I guess this is something else that potentially to factor in, is the ongoing costs. So from a maintenance point of view, and I guess, you know, to build, it's more expensive. To operate is potentially more expensive, and to maintain, potentially it's more expensive. So that's maybe one thing that members may need to actually consider. And will a 50-metre pool generate sufficient revenue that will offset any recurrent expenses that we will face? So I guess just have that in the back of our mind. The one thing in all my research that has actually proven to be a money maker, and also as something that really advantages the community, is that warm water hydrotherapy pools. So they generate the greatest use and also the greatest income. And when you think about Whyalla as a city, that whole hydrotherapy pool sort of concept is something that's not easily and readily available. And so that would be something that if we were refurbishing the centre, we should definitely look at, and potentially have it in some of the early stages of the redevelopment, so that it's actually creating income before, as we, you know, might close down and refurbish other parts of the centre. So yeah, that's probably all my comments at this stage.
Thank you, Liz. Just before we move on, Councillor Stupos, did you want to any supplementary comments or questions off the back of that? Otherwise, we'll move on to next speaker.
Councillor Westerman's got a hand up.
Yeah, Councillor Westerman. Yeah.
Yeah, I accept what Liz has said. I've taken that into account. I'm just looking at it from a pure dollar per square metre. The big one is cheaper than the small one. I just don't know which is the best to have, whether it's 25 or 50, because I wasn't at the public consultation meeting. So either one, I'll be happy for a refurbished Wiler Rec Centre, to be honest with you.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. Just given that there was a couple of comments there that I asked the staff to respond to, I just wanted to check that Councillor Stupos was fine with that. I'll now go to Councillor Whitman.
Yeah, I'm actually in favour of the third option, but my question was, has anyone spoken to the swimming club? Because I know they use it a lot, and I was just wondering what option they were in more favour of.
Councillor Westerman, I believe that the swimming club were involved in the community consultation last year. So unfortunately, I wasn't employed at council at the time, so I don't know their specific feedback, but that is something definitely we could close the loop with them again by going back to them. One of the other bits of research that I did discover was that the International Swimming Federation are comfortable with a 25-metre pool and is competition capable and approved, providing that the correct depths allow the depths of the pool is actually at the right level. So that was also something to keep in the back of our mind. Whilst perhaps not a preferred option, it is still sort of hits some international standards.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Liz, and thank you, Councillor Westman. Any other questions or comments from councillors? Okay, I'm just going to ask one extra question. So we provided the report to council previously. Council wished to defer or move to defer that item to enable further discussion. I just want to check, is there any other information that councillors would like included in the report when we reconsider this formally at the council meeting? Councillor Knox.
I'd like us to make sure that the report includes the impact on our budget and future budgets.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Stupos.
Further to David, it's going to be done in multiple stages. That's fine. If we can have some sort of timeline, we don't have to hold you to it. And whether the price that we set today will be fixed for that timeline, or whether that price will be variable as the years go by when they're building it.
And just checking, when you talk about the price, you're talking about the construction cost associated with the different stages? Yep, so I'll respond to that one now, that any contractors, when they tender, their prices will only be relevant for a certain period of time, and given the current prevailing economic conditions, particularly with COVID, I suspect that no company would hold their prices for 3 or 4 years if that's the time frame that we did the staging. But we'll take that question on notice and see what information we can include in the report. Any final comments on that item?
I might just add one thing, and picking up on Councillor Stone's point before about the Edward John Eyre High School hub. I think we do have to have a reasonably long think about how that is going to impact on what sports are going to be involved, and what it really looks like as urgently as possible. Many of the business cases around these leisure centre developments hinge upon their multi-purpose, multi-user, most upcoming sports concepts, and those other elements of hubs that traditionally need propping up or have added expenses, such as swimming pools and things like that, really need to be surrounded by those other faster growing enterprises. So I think as soon as possible we need definition around what that sporting hub at Edward John Eyre High is envisaged to be, and I'm just speaking with reasonable recent experience with the Port Lincoln Leisure Centre that underwent a refurbishment rather than a renewal or redevelopment of renewal, and none of the business case projections for the centre have come to life. In fact, they're still operating between 30 to 40% less than the predicted takings for the YMCA that runs it. And all the inherent building issues, so the big humidity that's created by the swimming pools on the steel works that were built for the original centre, are now coming to bite the City of Port Lincoln on the bottom. And even though it underwent a $14 million expenditure, the engineering of the building is as bad as it was when this was first mooted. So it's just a little warning of what we really need to understand, that 1975, 1974 building, what it's capable of in terms of refurbishment. I just wanted to end on that.
Yep, some very good points there. Thank you, Jay. Okay, with that, I'm now going to ask for someone to move that we go into confidence to deal with a confidential item. If I could get a councillor to indicate they're happy. So Councillor Santucci, seconded by Councillor Simpson. We're going to go into confidence now. So anyone from the public, if you want to stay in this public meeting, we'll return to this space from a confidential breakout room once we've concluded the confidential discussion. So sit tight if you want, and we'll return to you shortly. The councillors and staff, if you can sit tight, and we will very shortly be moved into that confidential breakout room. Thank you. Okay, all right. Thanks everyone for the conversation regarding that confidential matter. We're now back into the public meeting. We've got no other agenda items on tonight's agenda. Just remind councillors and the public that our next briefing session will be on Monday, the 11th of April at 5:30. That will be a confidential discussion regarding building assets and community facilities, continuation of the discussion we started a week or so ago. So I'll now close the meeting and look forward to seeing everyone on the 11th of April. Thank you.